to the point they wanted to kill him, murder him. So what I want to look at today, 6 things. Hater or lover, people pleaser or God pleaser, hypocrisy or transparency, flattery or truth teller, Caesar or God, and stubborn or submissive. So the first point I want to make here, hater or lover. So when you look at the passage, verse 47 and 48, and he was teaching daily in the temple, but the chief priests and the scribes and the leaders of the people sought to destroy him. And were unable to do anything, for all the people were very attentive to hear him. So essentially, the Sadducees, scribes, Herodians, and Pharisees, okay, those are the chief priests and the scribes and leaders of the people. They wanted to kill him. They hated him. Hate. Why? Why did they want to kill him? Why? Well, let me give you a couple of reasons. First of all, the Sadducees hated him because he went into the temple and he messed up their business. And he did that at the beginning of his ministry, and he did it at the end of his ministry. And he went in there, remember, he overturned the tables of the money changers, and he drove out the sacrifice sellers, and all of that business was controlled by the Sadducees, who were using the temple of God to make money. And when he interfered with that, understand that their idol was money. Their idol was money, their idol was power. And Jesus went in and he tore down their idol, and they got ticked at him. So they're planning to kill him because he's messing with their business. And if you've ever seen Jesus mess with a person's business, and we see it here in our church. People that come in here and they want to use the church for their business. They come in here and they want to promote their business in the church. And we don't permit that, to the point that I will go right up to somebody's face and say, if you continue to do that, I will remove you from the church, because this is not to be a house of business, but a house of prayer. And by the way, that happens. And it's happened recently. And when you do that and you tear a person's idol down, they get angry. So the Sadducees hated him because he messed around with their business. The Herodians, I mean, think of this. When Jesus was born, King Herod, what did he do? He tried to kill Jesus. He tried to kill the Messiah. Why? Because he was threatened by the Messiah coming into the world, because he wanted to protect his little kingdom. He wanted to protect his little kingdom. His delusional kingdom. So he tried to kill Jesus, and in so trying to kill Jesus, he killed a bunch of little babies down in Bethlehem. His son is ruling in the time of Jesus' crucifixion and resurrection. What did Jesus call his son? Right? In fact, Jesus appears before him on the night before he's crucified, but Jesus had a name for Herod, who was the tetrarch, the governor of Galilee. What did he call him? Yeah, he called him a fox, right? Look at this. There it is. You fox, right? There it is right there. He called him the fox. Why? Because he's sly, and he's cunning, and he's manipulative. And Jesus exposes him. And he hates Jesus. And then the scribes and Pharisees. Right? You have the 7 woes of the scribes and Pharisees in Matthew 23. Jesus called them hypocrites, right? You're a bunch of religious hypocrites. You're a bunch of phonies. You don't do what you say. You walk around and you act all self-righteous. You're fakes. That was Jesus' word to the Pharisees. He said, you swallow the camel and you strain the gnat. Now, this is Jesus doing a comedy skit in front of a bunch of people. Imagine somebody swallowing a camel. Well, what they would do is they would focus on these ridiculous little religious rules, and they would neglect mercy. They would neglect faith. They would neglect love. But they would focus on their little ridiculous rules. And I come from a family of a number of people who were in the mafia. And I have one uncle who used to go and light candles every day in the church. It was amazing how important it was to light a candle. And he used to let everybody know, I'm going to light a candle. Hey, I'll light a candle You put a buck in the thing, you put a buck in the basket, and you light a candle. Put another buck in, you light a candle. But he was always going up and lighting candles. Meanwhile, he was doing all sorts of other things that were illegal, hurting people, cheating people, right? But they would go and light candles. That's straining the gnat and swallowing the camel. He called them blind guys. The blind leading the blind. He called them whitewashed tombs. He said that you wash the outside of the tomb, right? You look all good on the outside, all show, but inside there's no go. Fakes, phonies. He said, you're just like your ancestors who killed the prophets. And ultimately they killed him. And they killed Stephen. And he called them a brood of vipers. I just want you to think of that. Somebody gets up to you and gets in your face and says, you know, you're a hypocrite. You're a viper, right? You're a fake. You're a phony. I think that really might tick you off if you're not in tune and willing to humble yourself and drop your self-righteousness. See, Jesus exposes us. You get around Jesus, he's going to expose you. And he's going to bring you into the light. And he's going to expose your sin. He's going to expose your sinfulness and your sinful habits and your sinful motives, and he's going to expose your ugliness. You know, people say, oh, you know, I'm really not that bad of a person. Well, would you be willing to put on the screen right before everybody in this room all the bad things that you've ever done in life? How about every bad thought? How about every evil thought? How about every lustful thought? How about every selfish? How about we put all that stuff up there? Hey, I don't know about you, but mine is going to run for a while. Right? It's going to run for a while. You guys probably get so bored. I'm not going to that church anymore. But Jesus exposes us. He breaks us to make us. He has to bring us to a place where we realize our sinfulness and our need for his salvation. So he breaks us to make us. Any of you who are in boot camp, what do they do in boot camp? They break you down before they can build you up. Because if they don't break you down, they're not going to be able to build you up. And until you're broken down, you're never going to be built up into the man or woman that you can be. So if you're in the Marines, or you're in the Air Force, you're in the Navy, right? You're in the Army, they break you down to build you up. And what Jesus does, again, he breaks us down. He breaks us down. He brings us to a place where we're broken so that he can build us up. And when he brings us into the light and exposes us, some people don't like that. And the Pharisees, Sadducees, scribes, and Herodians did not like that. What do you do when he brings you into the light? By the way, the Lord brings me into his light daily. And it's not comfortable. There was a guy named Saul of Tarsus. He was a Pharisee. He was self-righteous. He thought he knew it all. He thought he had it all. And he was riding on the road to Damascus one day, and this is Acts chapter 9:4. He fell to the ground and heard a voice say to him, Saul, why do you persecute me? White light all around him. He couldn't see. Saul, why do you persecute me? What should you do when Jesus shines his light in your life? I want you to watch what Saul did. Acts chapter 9, verse 5 and 6. And he said, who are you, Lord? And then the Lord said, I'm Jesus whom you are persecuting. It is hard for you to kick against the goads. By the way, that's kicking against spikes. If you're going to go against God, you're going to just simply be kicking against spikes for the entire life. You kick a spike, how about just stubbing your toe on a chair, right? So he trembled and was astonished and said, watch, here's what we need to do when we come into the light of the Lord. He said, Lord, what do you want me to do? When God brings you into his light, what do you want? What must I change? What do you want me to become? What do you want me to do? Have you noticed that God is an artist? Thursday and Friday, I had to drive up to Vernon each day for the rehearsal and the wedding of Joey and Camille. It was, let me tell you, one of the most beautiful wedding settings that I have ever done. On top of a mountain in Vernon, New Jersey, golf course around the mountain, and I'll tell you, you look north, south, east, and west, and you can see, I'm telling you, you see 15, 20 miles. And you can see the high point, you can look out to Pennsylvania. And the sky was bright blue, and it was just one of the most beautiful. Just had a great time just to say, God, what an artist you are. He said, if you look at the nebulas, if you look at the universe and all, if you look and see a tiger or a lion, the oceans and all the creatures underneath it, God is an artist. He makes things beautiful. When it comes to us, though, he needs a willing canvas. He will make your life beautiful. He will make you into the man or woman that he intended you to be. But he needs a willing canvas. And you have to be willing to yield to him for him to do that. The Sadducees, Pharisees, Herodians, and scribes were not willing to yield to him. They were offended when he showed them their flaws and their sins. They became enraged at him and they wanted to kill him. That is why they are the haters. The lovers are those who are willing to yield to him. Say, Lord, here's my life. Take it. And now make me into that man or woman that you created me to be. Second thing here. People pleaser or God pleaser. In Luke chapter 20, verse 19. And the chief priests and the scribes that very hour sought to lay hands on him. But they feared the people, for they knew he had spoken this parable against them. So I want you to see this, the chief priests and scribes. You know what they are? They're politicians. You know what politicians do? This is what they do. Right? Especially in our day, I don't care, the Republicans, Democrats, whatever. This is what they do. And they put their finger up in the air to see which way the wind is blowing, and then they set their sails. Hey, which way is popular opinion going? Which way is the majority going? And they run with that. And that's what the chief priests and the Sadducees and the Pharisees and the scribes were. They didn't care about what was true. They only cared about popular opinion. So they feared the people. Jesus didn't fear the people. Jesus didn't care what the people thought. He only cared about what the Father thought. So watch what happens here in verse 21. Then they asked him, saying, Teacher, we know that you say and teach rightly, and you do not show personal favoritism, but teach the way of God in truth. Now, I'll just say this to you. They didn't mean what they were saying. But they say it, again, this is a form of flattery. But they did recognize that Jesus was somebody who was not a politician. He wasn't looking for popular opinion. In fact, he pretty much went against the tide of the people that were around him. He didn't respect people. It says God is a non-respecter of people. And he realized people are fickle. You know, people one day they love you, and the next day they hate you. You know people how fickle and flaky people are? Trying to get people just to be a person of their word. It's very, very hard to find people like. He understood that. But his whole goal was to please the Father and not to be pleasing people. You know, if you're around the truth a lot, you'll find that it's contagious. And if you're around deception a lot, you'll find that deception is contagious. Well, Saul of Tarsus, who I was just telling you about, who met Jesus on the road, he spent a lot of time with Jesus, and all of a sudden the truth started to take an effect on his life. And it started infecting his life and transforming his life. But watch what Paul says in 1 Corinthians chapter 4, 3, and 4. The Corinthian church were a bunch of harsh, self-righteous, charismaniacs who were very critical of Paul. And this is what Paul said to them. He says, As for me, it matters very little how I might be evaluated by you or by human authority. Do you understand? Can I interpret that? I don't care what you think of me. That's what Paul is saying. I don't even trust my own judgment on this point. My conscience is clear, but that doesn't prove I'm right. You know what he's saying? I don't even care what I think about myself. Because sometimes, right, we don't think real clearly. He says the only thing that matters, and watch, it is the Lord himself who will examine me and decide. I don't care what you think. I don't even care about myself. The only thing that matters is what God thinks. That's all that matters. Hey, some of you older people, you come to that place, right? Mm-hmm. It's a good place to be. Some of the young people in here, they spend a lot of time worrying about what people think about them. Let me tell you, you want to be free? You want to really be free? Come to a place where you don't give a damn about what people think about you. The only thing you care about is what God thinks about you. You want to really be free? But you run around, you're walking on eggs all the time, worried about what somebody thinks about you. What a waste of life. Paul didn't care. In Galatians chapter 1, verse 10, he says, For am I now seeking the favor of men or of God? Or am I striving to please men? If I were still trying to please men, I would not be a bondservant of Christ. We're going to show you a little something here, a bondservant of Christ. What is a bondservant of Christ? The word is doulos. In the Old Testament, this was an indentured servant. A person owed somebody money, and they would serve for 7 years. At the end of the 7 years, the master would say, you know what, you're free to go. And the servant would say, you know what, you've been so good to me. You have given me so much. You have blessed my life so much. You've cared for me, my wife, my kids. You've given me a place to live. You've given me a great job. You've prospered me. And you know, I don't want to need your service. So I want to just dedicate my life to serving you the rest of my life. So he'd take him out and pierce his ear with an awl, and then he would become a servant for the rest of life. That's a dual loss. That's what it is to be a bondservant. I just want you to understand what Paul is saying here. He says, you know what, I don't seek to please men because I'm a bondservant of God. You know what he's saying? I've come to know how much God loves me. I've come to know that God is the Lord of my life, that God is the blesser of my life and the carer of my life and the one who has given me all these blessings. And since I've come to know that, you know what? See, I'm going to put his will first, and I'm not going to worry about what you think about me. How powerful is that? How powerful is that? Okay, number 3, hypocrisy or transparency. Verse 20. So they watched him and sent spies who pretended to be righteous. By the way, this is their whole game, whether it's their spies or them, they're always pretending. The Pharisees were pretenders, the Sadducees were pretenders, the scribes were pretenders, and the Herodians were pretenders. They were all great pretenders. Remember this song? Some of you remember this song. I'm going to play it for you today. Watch this song for a second. In fact, for those of you who know the song, you can add to it when we do the Platters. The Platters. Oh, please, I'm great pretender. That's what these guys are. They're a bunch of pretenders. You know who the greatest pretenders are in this world? I'll tell you something. They're not in the bar across the street at 10 o'clock at night.
Sundays.
In the gyms that I've trained in my life, you don't find the pretenders in there. Locker rooms. The greatest pretenders are in churches. The greatest pretenders are people in churches, in synagogues, in mosques. In Psalm 51, verse 6, behold, you desire truth in the inward parts, and in the hidden part you will make me to know wisdom. God desires us to be transparent, honest, genuine, authentic, undisguised. In other words, you know what? It's okay to be yourself. You don't need to put on that. You don't need to act holy. You don't need to act all righteous. It's okay to be you. That's what God rejoices in. In the story that Jesus told, and we looked at it weeks ago, of the Pharisee and the tax collector, the Pharisee stands before God and he says, hey, look at me, how wonderful I am. I'm just so good. Look at all the things I'm doing, God. I'm just so good. Look at me. I'm paraphrasing. And the tax collector, he just couldn't even look up to God, put down his head, he wept, beat his chest, and said, "No, I'm a sinful man, have mercy on me." She said, which one walked away forgiven? Which one walked away justified, righteous? It's the tax collector. You know what? In reality, the tax collector was probably more sinful than the Pharisee. But the Pharisee is just totally dishonest. He's self-righteous. He's got no transparency. And it's the tax collector who's standing before God and just saying to God, "God, I got issues. I got struggles that I'm struggling with. I've got some sin habits. I'm having a hard time with things." You know what I'm talking about. We all have them. That is what God rejoices in. In the scriptures, Psalm 34:18, Psalm 51:17. Let me read this to you. "The Lord is near to those who have a broken heart, and save such as have a contrite spirit. The sacrifices of God are a broken spirit and a broken and contrite heart. These, O God, you will not despise." You know what a broken spirit, a broken heart, a contrite heart is? It's a heart that is aware of its sinfulness. And the sinfulness is causing a brokenness in us, a regret. I want to tell you, the more aware you are of your sinfulness, the closer you are to the Lord. The more broken you are, the closer you are to the Lord. The hypocrites pretend that there is no sin and there is no brokenness. And I just want to stress this to you first. You don't see a lot of brokenness in Christianity today. You watch again, people who have, they're not in churches, their example of Christianity is what they see when they flip through the channels. So you have this guy who's wearing a $4,000 Armani suit, $700 Italian shoes. He's got a Rolex watch on his wrist. And he's got this cathedral around him. And he's got this magnificent backdrop. And he's strutting up and down on the platform like a peacock. And all he's doing is boasting, that he's so good, he's so good. And now he's just got this connection with God, and he gets everything he wants, and that if you'll send him your money, you're going to get everything you want. Right? For the most part. I know there's a few authentic preachers on the air. But you don't see brokenness. My favorite teacher through all the years of Christianity is a guy named A.W. Tozer. I don't know if I have come across, outside of Paul, a holier man than A.W. Tozer. But A.W. Tozer, throughout his writings, would just, all of a sudden, just share his brokenness about his sharp tongue, about a lustful thought, about an anger issue that he's dealing. And here's this man who, again, you see the brokenness in him. But again, the hypocrite is no brokenness. True ones would be close to him. The lovers are his brokenness. Number 4, a flatterer or truth teller. So in Luke chapter 20:21, then they asked him, saying, "Teacher, we know that you say and teach rightly, and you do not show personal favoritism, but teach the way of God in truth. Is it lawful for us to pay taxes to Caesar or not?" I just want you just to notice this. Every word they say about Jesus is true, but they don't believe it. They don't mean it. Everything they're saying about him here is absolutely true, but all it is flattery. Flattery, it's puffery, bloomery, and as the Irish say, it's blarney. Flattery. Psalm 12, verse 2 and 3, they speak falsely to one another with flattering lips, and with a double heart they speak. May the Lord cut off flattering lips and tongue that speaks good things. God don't like flattery. Proverbs 29:5 says, a man who flatters his neighbor is spreading a net for his steps. You ever these people, they flatter you, and the whole time they're setting a trap for you? They're trying to bait you into something. They might want you to buy something from them, trying to sell you something. In 1 Thessalonians chapter 2, verse 5 through 6, "For we never came with flattering speech, As you know, nor with a pretext to read, God is witness, nor did we seek glory from men, either from you or from others, even though as apostles of Christ we might have asserted our authority. We're not supposed to be people who are flatterers. Ephesians chapter 4:15, we are to speak the truth in love. But speaking the truth in love may grow up into all things into him who is the head of Christ. Hey, there's a lot of things we can compliment one another about. Let them be true. We don't have to make up things. We don't have to be fakes in the way that we talk. Just speak the truth in love to one another, and you'll build one another up. And if you have something hard to say to someone, just speak it in love. And some will receive it, some won't. By the way, I believe the things Jesus said to the Pharisees were in love, just that they could not accept it. Number 5, Caesar or God? Verse 21 through 25. And then they asked him, saying, Teacher, we know that you stay and teach rightly, and you do not show personal favoritism, but teach the way of God in truth. Is it lawful for us to pay taxes to Caesar or not? Now let me just put on the brakes there for a second, because what they're doing is they're trapping Jesus. They've got him between a rock and a hard place, or they think they've got him between a rock and a hard place. So what they're saying to him is, listen, are we to pay taxes to Caesar, or are we to just, give our stuff to God? And if he said, pay your taxes to Caesar, then they would have said, Jesus is with the Romans and he's against us as Jews, kill him. And if he would have said, don't pay taxes to Caesar, they would have said, look, he's rebelling against Rome, call the soldiers, have him arrested and crucified. So they're going, oh, we got him. But he perceived their craftiness. Listen, you can fool a fool, and you can fool yourself, but you can't fool God. Just tell you that. As you're going through life, he sees everything, knows everything, he knows every motive of your heart. He perceived the craftiness and said to them, why do you test me? Show me a denarius. Whose image and inscription does it have? And they answered, Caesar's. And then he said to them, render therefore to Caesar the things that are Caesar's, and to God the things that are God's. So he says, here, give me a denarius. This is a tribute penny. Whose picture is on it?
Caesar.
Caesar. And by the way, every Caesar put and minted coins with their pictures on it. Caligula, Nero, Tiberius, Augustus, they had their little coin with their picture on it. So Jesus says, whose picture is on it? Caesar. So he says, well, give to Caesar the things that are Caesar's. Pay your taxes. What do the Romans want? They have their poll tax. They have all their other things. Pay your taxes. Romans chapter 13, verses 1 and 2. Let every soul be subject to the governing authorities. We're supposed to live as good citizens. For there is no authority except from God, and the authorities that exist are appointed by God. Now, I don't know if you realize that you have been appointed by God. The governing authorities have been appointed. The police, the mayor, the councilman, right? They have been appointed by God to create a safe society, and we're supposed to obey the laws. Pay your taxes, keep the speed limit, don't cheat, don't lie, but just live the life. By the Christian life, if you're living according to the Word, you're not going to have problems with the law. You're not going to have problems. You're not going to have DWIs. You're not going to have traffic tickets. You're not going to be in traffic court. You're not going to have problems with the tax man. If you're living the way Jesus has told us to live, I'll just tell you that. For walking with the Lord for 35 years, I have never been in court. I was once. And that's another story. Never been charged, never been sued, nothing like that. You live a very nice, peaceful life. By the way, I don't totally agree with a lot of the laws, but for the most part, there are not laws that are interfering with my Christian faith. I can go along, and you know what? I'm happy I live here and not in Russia, or in China, or in North Korea, or living in Rome at the time of Jesus. Everything's pretty good here. I know that things are changing, and we're not quite happy with everything, but verse 2, therefore whoever resists the authority resists the ordinance of God, and those who resist will bring judgment on themselves. So give to Caesar what is Caesar's. Give him, your tax money and what he requires, and You give it to him. But then it says, give to God what is God's. What is God's? Let me just ask you this. The coin had the image of Caesar on it. Where's God's image? Where did God put his image? Right? Look, Genesis 1:26, then God said, let us make human beings in our image and likeness. By the way, that's pretty deep, isn't it? Because I don't know how many of you have ever thought about that. Give to Caesar what is Caesar. There's the coin with the image of Caesar on it. Give to God what is God. Here we are, created in the image and likeness of God. What does God require of us? That we give him our lives, ourselves. Right? It tells us in Romans 12:1, present your bodies as living sacrifices. Let's go in the soul and the heart and the mind. We are to give ourselves to God. That's what's his. Last thing. Stubborn or submissive. So verse 26. But they could not catch him in his words in the presence of the people. And they marveled at his answer. He blew their minds. What an answer. Give to Caesar what is Caesar and give to God what is God's. He blew their minds. And here they are. And they have just met the Word of God, the Logos. They're in the presence of the Almighty. They have just experienced Chachma, the divine Chachma of God, the divine wisdom of God. And you understand they kept silent? They just walked away in their stubborn little religious, self-righteous hearts. And there's no change. That's stubbornness. Look at Jeremiah chapter 7:24. Yet they did not obey or incline their ear, but walked in their own counsels, and in their stubbornness of their evil heart, and went backward and not forward. They walked in their own counsel. In other words, they didn't want to hear God's counsel. And in the stubbornness of their evil heart. I mean, we could be stubborn. How many of you find yourself, you could be stubborn? How many? Right? Yeah, I can be very stubborn. Right, Sam? And I just want to tell you something. It's something we're born with. I noticed my grandson is only a year and a half old. He can be very stubborn at times, right? We like to say he got that from his mother. We don't know what John was like when he was 1.5 years old. We know what Rachel was like. Right? The sinful nature is passed on. Even the littlest kids. Very, very stubborn. And we can be stubborn in our pride. Right? We just stubborn in our pridefulness. Just unwilling to yield. And we can be stubborn in our ignorance. Right? We think that we know it all. And in the reality, we know nothing. And we'll refuse wise counsel. Think about it. See, people, they'll refuse wise counsel about their lives, about their careers, about their financial situations, about their health. They will refuse it. And just again, in their stubborn ignorance, be stubborn in our self-righteousness, right? I'm right. I'm right. I'm right. We're living in a heap of ruins. We're living in this mess. Well, you know what? You're right. Hey, at least I know I'm right. How about stubborn in our foolishness? Look at this woman. She's smoking out of her trach. I saw a person doing this at Sloan Kettering years ago. I went up to visit somebody with cancer, and there was a guy standing at the door, smoking out of his trach. And as I walked by, I was like, man, this guy just don't get it. He just, you just not get. I mean, what has to happen to you before you will wake up and repent from your stubbornness and foolishness? They know what they're doing. How many of you stop and think of this? You may be doing things that are totally destructive to your lives. Right? Marriage, family, career, finance, spiritual life. And you're doing things that are just totally destructive to those things, and yet, you know what? In your stubbornness, you just foolishly continue to do them. How about people who are stubborn in their religion? And that's the issue these people have. Just a refusal to stop and to examine your doctrine to see if it's true and lines up with Scripture. There are many people like that. They're just like they are so entrenched in their religion that they will not stop to look to see if what they're committed to is actually true. To stop and look at your beliefs and examine them. To examine the way you're living, to see if you're living right. You know, in the Gospels, we have the greatest submission and surrender of eternity. When Jesus was in the Garden of Gethsemane, in Matthew chapter 26, verse 39, and he went a little beyond them and fell on his face and prayed, saying, Father, my Father, if it is possible, let this cup from me be removed. Let it pass from me. Yet not as I will, but as you will. And that is the greatest act of submission that has ever occurred. Do you think that was easy for him? By the way, it wasn't easy for him, and it's never easy for us. Two of the elders in the church came to me last Sunday and asked me to submit to something and to them. I did. Let me just tell you something. It was not easy. I like to be in control. I don't know about you. I like to be in control. You know when people ask me, hey, let's go somewhere? I like to drive. I like to be the one driving. I don't feel quite safe when other people are driving. I like to drive. I know that I'm in control, right? See, how many of you get a little nervous when you're on an airplane? I do. A little nervous. Just when that plane takes off, praying the Our Father and praying Psalm 23. And you know the odds of the plane crashing compared to driving a car? Like they're astronomical. You're thousands of times safer flying an airplane than driving in a car. But we feel safer driving in our car. Why? Because we're in control. So when I get in my car, I feel like I'm in control. I like to be in control. It's hard for me not to be in control. But throughout the days and the weeks, there are many times where God says to me, I want you to submit. I want you to surrender. And it's never easy. But I'll tell you something. It's always good. I want to just wrap it up with flipping Matthew 7:24. Watch. Yet they did not obey or incline their ear, but walked in their own counsels, and in the stubbornness of their evil heart went backward and not forward. Now let me just put this around. This is when I do studies. By the way, do not think that I am changing the Word of God. But just to put this in the positive, yet they did obey and incline their ear and walked in God's counsels. And in the submission of their righteous hearts, and went forward and not backward. God wants to take us forward. He wants to advance your life. I believe He wants to advance all aspects of your lives. And when we live under His counsel and we submit to Him, making the right decisions with a righteous heart, then He can move us forward and not backwards. He was not able to do that with the Pharisees, the Herodians, the Sadducees, and the scribes. He was able to do it with 11 apostles and a number of others who followed Him. And He can do it in your life. So here's our wrap up, right? Hater or lover, people pleaser or God pleaser, hypocrisy or transparency, flatterer or truth teller, Caesar or God, stubborn or submissive. And here, just a quick, simple application. What is the difference? What's the difference between the lovers and the haters? I mean, ultimately, what is that thing that makes the difference? And it is this. And again, I come back to this passage, John 17:3. And this is life eternal, that they might know thee, the only true God, and Jesus Christ, whom thou hast sent. When you come to know him, you will find you will love him. When you come to know him in your heart, know him intimately. Let me tell you, if you're on earth for a short time, some of you are going to be dying, some of you sooner than later, right? Well, we're all going to die, unless the rapture happens. And like I like to say, after doing hundreds of funerals through the years, they all are pretty much the same. We say some nice things here, whether the person was nice or not. I won't say nice things about someone who wasn't nice. I'm just going to preach the gospel. And then we go to the cemetery and we put the body in the ground. And then we used to go to a restaurant and eat potato salad. Or if we're with a Latino family, enchiladas. Mexican family, tacos. Italian family, we eat pasta and spaghetti and calamari. We all gonna die. We got a short time here. The most important thing you can invest your life in, get to know him. Don't go through life not having gotten to know about Jesus and gotten to know him. You're going to spend your life on all these, let me tell you something. Piss your life away. It's so many stupid things. Those stupid gadgets. Do you think, how much of that is going to make your life better? How much of that is going to put more money in your pocket? How much of that is going to give you the home you want to live in? How much of that is going to make your marriage better? How much, we're addicted nuts. I'm talking to a guy who's in prison. And he was developed a prison workout. He wrote a book. And he said to me, Frank, I spent more time working out in prison than I have my whole life. And he goes, I spent more time working out, and I barely ever talk to anybody other than to instruct them about fitness in the prison. And he said, that was one of the best investments I ever made. He goes, because those people didn't give a hoot about me and care about me, and that's not quite the wording that he used. But he said, he goes, spend more time, when he's talking fitness, spend more time working out, taking care of yourself physically. They're just wasting your time with people who don't care about you. Let me just stop. How much time do we spend wasting on stupid things than the most important thing? And that is getting to know God and His Son Jesus Christ. Because when you come to really know Him, you know what's going to happen? You will surrender to Him. And you will love Him. When you come to really know Him. And that He died for you on that cross and hung it with 3 nails that were meant for your hands and feet. 6 hours one Friday. So that you would never have to suffer separation from God. That you would never have to suffer hell. He took your hell upon Him to keep you from ever having to go to hell. And on the 3rd day He was raised from the dead. And He wants to have a relationship with you. He wants you to know Him. And today could be the day when you open your heart to Him and invite Him in. And begin this relationship and this journey with Him. And you can fall in love with the person who loves you more than you will ever know. So would you bow your heads with me and we'll close?